You know that feeling when you scroll through a dozen welding rigs, stare at the glossy photos, and think this looks perfect for my shop, only to have the machine arrive and spend half the day trying to figure out why the arc keeps sputtering? I've been there, and the frustration is real, especially when you're paying a few $100s for a piece of equipment that should just work out of the box. That's why today I'm digging into the SSimder 200A multi-process welder with spool gun, a 10-in-1 combo that promises to cover MIG, TIG, stick, and even plasma cutting, all in one portable box. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'll break down whether it lives up to the hype or ends up as another dusty tool in the garage. First off, the biggest question people ask about a machine like this is, do I really need a multi-process unit, or am I better off buying separate dedicated welders for each job? The answer depends heavily on how you actually work. If you're a hobbyist who jumps between thin-sheet aluminum projects, occasional steel repairs, and the occasional plasma cut for custom metal art, having one box that can switch modes with a dial is a genuine convenience. You won't have to scramble for a different power supply or haul multiple heavy units onto a job site. On the other hand, if you run a full-time shop that does high-volume production welding, you'll quickly notice that a purpose-built MIG or TIG machine, especially one with higher duty cycles, will outperform a jack-of-all-cats in speed and consistency. The SSimder's core selling point is its 200A IGBT inverter paired with automatic dual-voltage capability. What that means in plain English is you can plug it into a standard 110V outlet for light-duty work or switch to 220V when you need that extra push for thicker metal. I tested the voltage toggle on a modest home workshop setup, and the transition was seamless. The welder recognized the change within a couple of seconds and adjusted the output without any user-level reconfiguration. For anyone who's limited to a 110V circuit in a garage but occasionally gets access to a 220V hookup at a job site, that flexibility is a real time saver. It also eliminates the need for a separate transformer or a second machine, which is where the value really begins to show up. When it comes to MIG welding, the SSimder includes both traditional gas-shielded MIG and Flux core operation, plus a pulse MIG mode designed for aluminum. I ran a series of bead tests on inch 6061 T6 using the pulse setting and a spool gun attachment. The resulting welds had a clean, smooth profile with minimal spatter, and the heat input control prevented the typical warping you see when you push too hard on aluminum. The spool gun integration is a noteworthy convenience. Many entry-level machines either lack a spool gun port or require a separate adapter that adds bulk. Here, the spool gun connects directly, and the machine remembers the settings when you switch back to standard MIG, which is handy when you're alternating between steel and aluminum in the same session. TIG work is where the SSimder tries to differentiate itself with an advanced HF TIG function. In practice, the high-frequency start works reliably on both AC and DC modes, meaning you can start the arc without a physical contact tip. I tried welding a thin stainless steel sheet, and the HF start kicked in cleanly, eliminating the need to tap the tip with a tungsten rod, a small detail that can make a big difference in a production environment. However, the duty cycle on TIG at 200A is limited to about 20%, so you'll need to rest the machine after a minute or two of continuous welding. For hobbyist projects or occasional repair work, that's acceptable, but a professional fabricator who needs long weld passes will find it restrictive. Plasma cutting is another feature that often trips up users of multi-process units. The SSimder boasts a built-in pilot arc system, which allows cutting without touching the workpiece, a safety plus for thicker materials. In my testing, the cutter handled inch stainless steel and inch mild steel with decent consistency, though the cut speed was not as fast as a dedicated plasma cutter from a specialized brand. You'll notice a slight wobble at lower amperage settings, which can translate into a rougher edge on thinner sheets. If your primary need is occasional clean cuts for DIY projects, the built-in cutter is a convenient extra. But if precision cutting is a daily requirement, you might still want an independent plasma cutter. Now, let's talk about the practical trade-offs you won't see in the spec sheet. The machine's all-in-one design means the control panel is packed with knobs, selectors, and a digital readout. While the layout is logical, MIG, TIG, stick, plasma each has its own mode button. There is a learning curve. New users can feel overwhelmed, especially when adjusting parameters like pre-flow, post-flow, and pulse frequency on the fly. The manual does a decent job of explaining each setting, but you'll spend some time getting comfortable with the interface before you can crank out a